Welcome to this week's RuneScape podcast. I'm Mod Matt, he the podcast monkey, and this week we're straight into it with Mod Osborne, Lore Corner, and all things Bandos.
Welcome to our little Lore Corner. I'm Mod Osborne. I've got Mod Rowley, Mod Raven, and Mod Stew, and this time round we're talking about big old Bandos, a big high war god. Where do we start?
He's dead.
He's dead.
Spoilers.
Oh my gosh! You just
It's not a spoiler by now.
Oh, people are still reeling. It's too
I
soon.
know, that's why I wanted to get in there quick.
Bandos was around with the god letters, wasn't he? I'm pretty sure. I've got this kind of hazy memory of him looking like a goblin.
He's one of the older ones, definitely.
Yeah. So has been around kind of from the start.
Yeah, at least since the Goblin series started.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, which is a good place to kind of kick off because Bandos for me was the first one to really push, possibly even break the edicts. I always remember Chosen Commander, fantastic quest series. I love the Cave Goblin series. I thought, John A did a great job on those. But the Chosen Commander, he has an avatar that takes over a person's body and then starts stomping around. If I remember the edicts correctly, you can't directly manipulate the game. Oh, sorry, the game. Well, he's always
effectively, yeah.
And I always thought that was the biggest push. So my first impression from Bandos was that he was the most cheeky. Do you have any other kind of initial first impressions of Bandos?
He was a great strategist.
Yeah.
It's the thing that people often overlook with Bandos because it's the big high war god, and so they think, big strength, I will hit things, smash. But he was a master strategist. That's why he was able to break the edicts, because he, sort of twist the edicts.
Yes.
Because he worked out, he had a plan in advance. So he had that plan set in motion. He had everything going to convert, poor old Zanuck into his kind of, fleshy puppet. And all of this would have taken a great deal of forward planning. I mean, this is, it was centuries of planning?
Yeah.
So he's a good strategist.
That's what I liked. Oh, sorry.
If you want to maintain long-term warfare, you can't just go around hitting things. You need long-term strategy.
He's a slow burner. Because it would be very easy and very tropish, I guess, for the kind of the leader of all the goblins and orcs, and ogres and trolls to be brutish and simple and...
Again, I think it was part of
physical.
That wanting to have gods that had positives and negatives, to have flaws and things to attract followers. And before that, Bandos was all flaws, basically.
Yeah.
So giving him that intelligence, that strategy, it's like you wouldn't expect it of him. It's something to look up to, to revere.
Yeah, absolutely. Which kind of fed into, I know we're skipping a little bit ahead here, but talking about the concept of Bandos when we first... So the first concept, which I think is like players have, it's in the public domain, was of effectively the Mumak in Lord of the Rings, Return of the King.
Yeah, with the little goblins on his shoulders.
Yeah, and that
platforms.
While it's a beautiful concept, it completely devalued Bandos. You have this, effectively, it felt like those small goblins were controlling, just as, the Eastern Riders were controlling the Mumak. We're moving Bandos around, go hit this, go destroy that city. So we kind of pulled back again, and we had another crisis, just like with Armadillo. Kind of sat down and discussed, what is Bandos? And I think we picked up on some story that he was of the last of his race, perhaps?
Yeah. After having killed the rest of them.
I don't think he killed all of them. I think it was that the race were very, like the Kaizaj was very, very tournament-oriented, very, if you want to be leader, then you must defeat your
there was certainly the race he came from, or the planet he came from, and the races there were very warlike.
Yes.
But there was also the world-ending event that was coming for them, the meteors. It might not have been world-ending, but
yes.
I can't remember his name. It was Mod Jax, wasn't it? Jododu Otakai or something like that.
Jododu Otakai.
Something like
that.
I like it. I don't recall exactly. But yeah, that idea that he was keeping the planet safe, but all the time, all the people on the planet were just killing each other.
Yeah.
It was an interesting origin story.
And then we were kind of thinking about, what would he look like? He's not going to look like a troll. He's not going to look like an ogre. We want to push that a little bit out of there, but we still want him to feel bigger than the other gods. There was a case of we wanted that outline to just be, larger than the others. We got a lot of kind of slight humanoid gods there, and then so we kind of thought, bulky. We still want to go bulky. We want that kind of burning intensity and intelligence in the eyes. And the idea of this kind of walking suit of armour started coming in. That was the first step. We liked that, but then we thought there was an element of the raptor to it.
I remember when we had the idea of what was underneath it as well, which was that wonderful thing of saying, let's take a rhino and let's take a shark. Two terrifying things. And if we squish them together, and that's kind of...
It was the killer, so intelligent killer, the notion of the assassin. We were looking around kind of the animal world because we knew it was that beast-like feeling and a different silhouette, not necessarily completely humanoid. And we're looking in the animal kingdom for that kind of intelligent killer. We were looking at, eagles. No, that's too armadillo. Yeah. And then we came to the great white shark. But having a god that looked like Shark Attack outfit, is probably wouldn't have gone down too well. But there were certain elements that we started to like from the great white shark, the teeth, that kind of burning intensity of the eyes. And then it was almost, right, what best represents that barreling physicality, and kind of just tearing into a room and just breaking everything up. We looked at bulls, and the rhino came in. And then from the rhino, we also really liked that kind of hardiness of the skin.
Yeah.
And that kind of fed into everything that was under the armour. We did actually concept under the armour, which I think, again, might be out there, I'm hoping.
It was because sharks have that really kind of tough skin as well. So it's that lovely amalgamation of the two as well, which was really
that aerodynamicness of the shark, but also with the hardiness of a rhino. And then it came into, as it always does, like colours. One of the problems is that we use colours a lot in terms of representing symbols, banner work and all of this. Like we like people to, and when they're wearing outfits of the gods, they look different from another god's colours. But there's always overlap and it's so difficult. And so we ended up with a kind of Bandos orange, orange and green. It's tough. I think if we ever introduce another god, I think that we're just going to have to go polka dot or fuchsia.
Bright neon pink.
Yeah, this is it. So we eventually found a little space for him. So Bird and the Beast, I think it's worth talking about, the way we kind of brought him back against Armadillo. I think in-house we kind of all thought that maybe Bandos would lose. So this time we were right.
Yeah, it was after seeing the World Event 1, because in World Event 1 we all thought Zamorak would win, and that was just not true. And so we learnt from that how players will side generally with who they see as the good guy. And so we all kind of went, well, out of the two of them, Bandos has more references in game, but those references in game are of him as an antagonist. And so he is the bad guy in this as far as, we can all see. So we were fairly sure what was going to happen. We expected him quite strong, but
we dialed up the coolness on Bandos. We really wanted him to look impressive, and he was impressive.
Oh, yeah.
We did all we could to give him an origin, to actually make him have kind of viable philosophies, this sort of thing. His followers were pretty cool too. But it wasn't enough in the end. Poor Bandos.
Umbral has this background of nobility and justice and things, and that's a strong banner to rally against.
You've got mystery as well.
Yeah.
You can look at so many characters, Zaros Raptor, where the Nomad, where the degree of mystery has really helped a character. The fact that Armadillo hasn't really been around probably also helped. But we tried something different with World Event 2, which was to kill the god at the end of the World Event. Yeah. And now this kind of split us as staff in two. In fact, there was several people who...
Contentious issue.
It was really contentious in-house.
Still is, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think if you took a vote now, I think probably people would have voted to not kill Bandos. But you have to look at it. I mean, to be the devil's advocate, I'm probably on that side too. The devil's advocate, the sixth age needed some blood.
Yeah. It needed to show that it had teeth, that we meant business, that people could die, gods could die.
That there was some threat to it all.
And there was at least, without that kind of slightly mean thing, in Bandos, his story had effectively been told. So Bandos was mostly tied to the Goblin series. When the Goblin series came to a close, that at least meant that his storyline had a kind of closure.
But as a counterpoint, some players did have the valid point that was the storyline of Zanuck and Bandos' Avatar, and that Bandos, actually, his story was still yet to be told. And there was always the threat of Armadillo. Armadillo's story not being told at all, immediately coming in and then being wiped out, which probably played into the votes a little.
I think it is a lot,
Yeah, and I think that if we're going to do it again, I mean, we needed World Event 2 to come quickly after World Event 1, but we would probably have told some stories about these two gods beforehand, really kind of given a basis, a bedrock.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Indeed.
Even still, if the decision of how we killed him off was a contentious one, sort of the follow-up stories have also been somewhat contentious, or at least they've been divisive.
Yeah.
The Mighty Fall and, of course, Nomad's Elegy now, with tying up some of the loose ends. It's never a bad idea to kill a character as long as the reasons are good, and as long as what follows are good.
Yeah,
I'm not
as in
sure.
there's something.
Yeah, I'm not sure we were quite there, but I think Elegy now has started to double down on that, and the effect it's had on other characters, I think, is still a good one.
Yes,
overall,
I think it suits the Bandos races that a god that represented, like, kind of, if you want something, take it. You are, like, power is strength is equal to power. That leaving a vacuum there at the top means that philosophy becomes really interesting. You now got the kind of Bork and the orgs and everybody fighting for dominance.
I think there's maybe more we could do with it still.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, what we said in the previous podcast with, like, would some of Bandos's followers now view Armadillo as the strongest and then join his forces?
I mean, that's a great idea, isn't it? I mean,
that
why
would
not?
be really fun to write.
Armadillo's proven that he's the strongest, so surely there's...
Yeah.
Having some sort of civil war, which was kind of covered by the tournament in Mighty Fall, that sort of thing.
I don't think there's enough civil wars happening this year in terms of media. Let's do it.
Nah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And Mighty Fall, I don't know if you know this, its original concept was wildly different, and certainly in terms of tone. Again, I was really disappointed that we didn't go for the tone, but in hindsight, I'm really glad we didn't, because it would have been completely mismatching what players expected.
Again, the comedy was it?
Yeah, it was kind of an element of comedy. The notion of a sports movie, a kind of a Karate Kid, Mortal Kombat style scenario. Like, you're going in and you're in the kind of the early rounds, and you've got another friend who's also in the early rounds.
We're going to get a montage in game one.
Get a montage.
I remember there was the prototype discussion about how to do a montage.
Yeah, and the idea of having your kind of goblin coaches. Some of this is still seen a little in Mighty Fall. You can see the remnants of it. Like, Burnt Meat is kind of your coach, and you've kind of got Zanuck almost participating in the tournament at the same time. But really, it was, the Rockies, the Karate Kids, the Mortal Kombats, the Street Fighters, but as a parody. And I think that would have been wildly misjudged.
It would have missed the mark. Yeah.
Was that change in tone a response to the cutscenes that we had of Bandos's death? Because those were quite comedic, and I think those might have maybe not gone down that well.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Also, while people weren't supporting Bandos, and we took that kind of lack of support for Bandos as seeing him as an antagonist or seeing him as comedic, that wasn't right. Well, it was simply they preferred Armadillo, and actually they still wanted to respect Bandos. And there was even calls for like a tribute to Gothic-style event a year on from Bandos' death. So there was still a sense that it needed to be respected. Yeah, and Mighty Fall luckily changed into a Fall Guys Edge tournament, or however you say it. One of the mistakes that kind of Bandos followers make, or people who are anti-Bandos, is that there's no future for Bandos storylines. So we've kind of proven that isn't true.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Bandos race and Bandos races. We've got a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Bandos is dead. That's probably worth mentioning. We're not big fans of bringing back.
I think we're very much against the idea of bringing gods
which is
back.
why we've done.
We don't want the whole kind of death of Superman thing.
It's written into the law, isn't it? In the way the universe works.
Yeah.
What makes one a god denies one an afterlife.
Yeah.
And so they cannot come back.
Yeah. And there are people who still see Bandos as an antagonist, but Nomad's Elegy did a lot to kind of round that off a little bit. I mean, did you want to talk... Some people want to see this dialogue.
So, Maud Wilson, who is a Bandosian supporter, wrote some very, very nice dialogue for your conversation with Zanuck. So if you killed Zanuck, you can, when she asks you, how dare you kill me, kind of thing, you can retort with the reasons. One of the reasons I did it, for Bandos. And she has a proper go at you because, basically she thinks anyone who's a follower of Bandos is a psychopath. And then the player gets to retort with, no, actually, this isn't fair, stop. Because they're using the strength that the Bandos belief gives them in order to become stronger, to fight bigger dangers, to protect weaker people. There is the idea of, the weak must be destroyed, but you can direct your fury or your conflict elsewhere and target the right people. And by proxy, it will protect other people. So it's the idea that gaining strength from the Bandosian belief was a vital way for helping them overcome it. Yeah. If anyone gets a chance, I thoroughly recommend reading his dialogue. I'm not doing it justice.
And a great counterpoint to Armadillo, which is, the weakness or perceived weakness, which is why there was such a conflict between them. That's great. So there we go. We have covered Bandos. Next time round, we're going to go into more dead gods because why not? We've killed a couple. This time round, we're going to be talking about Gothic, so please do tune in.
And now we have Mod Balance here on the sofas with us. Hi, Mod Balance.
Hello, Mod Matt here. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well.
Excellent.
So you're here today to talk about music. And what is your favourite piece of music in RuneScape?
My favourite piece of music in RuneScape has to come from actually my favourite quest of all time.
Okay.
So I guess the listeners can guess what quest it is if I say the song. The bit of music is Memories of Gothics. It is absolutely fantastic. It's mind-blowingly good.
And I understand this may have made you cry a little bit on occasion.
It was the quest that made me shed a tear or two, and then the kind of score underneath it all, just like it breaks your heart as you're going through the thing. I commit the cardinal sin of space barring through quests because I'm like quite keen to finish everything.
Yeah.
Obviously, given
This
my
was
mod
a quest
name,
you just couldn't do it.
given my mod name, like I have this kind of affinity with Gothics, right? So I didn't want to rush ahead,
Right.
And I was absorbing the story, and it broke my heart, and it to this day haunts me. And this music epitomizes that quest. It's outstanding.
Okay, well, let's listen to it now and see if you're blubbing by the end.
Lovely.
Well, that definitely left tears on Mod Balance's face. So now we're off to Mod Infinity and the player support team to talk about rules and tools.
Hello and welcome to the latest segment of this week's podcast. We're Customer Support. I'm Mod Infinity and I'm joined here by Mod CW. Steve?
Yep, hello everyone. Delighted to be back again for another Customer Support podcast. It's becoming one of my favourite moments of the week, actually, recording these.
Oh, brilliant.
So, other than seeing you, of course.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Okay, so today it's just me and you, Steve, and today we're going to be talking about the rules of RuneScape and our approach to how we apply them in our game, as well as kind of the various different tools available to our players to help tailor their own kind of game experience. So, Steve, if you can just talk in a broad sense about, why do we have rules? What purpose do they serve?
Yes, I mean, in most things in life, you'll find if you're at school or work or things like that, there's certain rules that you kind of have to adhere to. And the kind of general principle is just to make sure that kind of, it's safe for everyone. Everyone understands, where the sort of borderlines are, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And so it's really just in that spirit that we have some rules in RuneScape and we just say, look, here's some general guiding principles of things which are just, blatantly unfair, which are just rule breaking, or just which are inappropriate and we just don't want in RuneScape, which is a really, social and fun environment, but it's live, it's on the internet, people are interacting with other people. So we just have these kind of guidelines in place to make sure that it's like a safe and fun online experience for people. There's kind of fostering a healthy community. I think that's something that's really important, but that doesn't mean that, every little bit of rule breaking that we see, we'll deal with. But clearly, we saw this at RuneFest, that there's very different sort of people that play RuneScape here. So old and young, different cultural backgrounds, different belief systems, different kind of moral standards among players, but everyone has this commonality that they play RuneScape. So it's very difficult for us to say this particular type of behaviour is against the rules, or don't say or do this particular thing, because, you know, some people will be fine with that, some people won't like it. You know, everyone has different tolerance levels.
Yeah.
So what we try and do is just sort of use sort of judgment and just say, here's a guiding principle of something which, generally speaking, is unacceptable. And if you are concerned about that behaviour, you know, you can use your own kind of player settings to either not see that behaviour or not be involved in it. Or if you're really concerned, you could pop a report into us and we'll use a sort of wider sense judgment to just decide whether we need to do something for the good of the wider community or not.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks for that, Steve. So I want to kind of get on to actual specific rules. So we've talked in a broad sense about why we have them and the purpose they serve. But on social media, I'm sure you've seen a few yourself, and on our forums, people will ask questions about particular rules. And they talk about rules such as gambling or item scamming, real-world trading, for instance, multiple logging in, and all these different kind of rules or not that they're talking about and asking questions. So I'm just wondering if we can kind of clarify what our stance is on some of these rules. So if we can start off with, say, cheating, so using macros and that kind of stuff in our game.
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much have a zero tolerance for cheating in terms of using macros, or people will refer to them as bots, more common use of what it is. But, you know, it's just not fair on other players. It's not fair on people that are playing the game as intended for somebody else to just, you know, bot their way through the game. There's actually not much satisfaction in doing that anyway. You know, if you can achieve a 99 in a skill or something like that and you didn't actually do it, at the time you might think it's a good idea to actually, you know, get the 99 that way, but when you look back at it retrospectively, it doesn't really mean anything to you because you haven't put the time and effort in to actually obtain it. It's a worthless thing. And of course, the other thing is a lot of people that use macros and bots, that, you know, they're doing it not so much to play RuneScape, but more to kind of, you know, gain wealth, to sell illegally and things like that. And it's just not part of the ethics of RuneScape. It's just not the way the game's intended to be played. It's a social game. You're supposed to interact with other players. You're supposed to, you know, the more time you invest, you know, the greater the reward, the greater the enjoyment of the game. And that's just all undermined by, you know, bot and macro use. So there's pretty much zero tolerance on that. You know, if you use a bot or a macro, you know, you will be permanently banned. In very rare occasions, we kind of temporarily ban people for sort of various reasons, where we can see someone is really invested. Maybe they've played for a long, long time. They've just made one little slip up, one little mistake. They're not a hardcore invested gold farmer. They're not selling the gold off to real world trade and things like that. And they've just made a poor error of judgment, a tiny little bit of macro use. And we kind of sometimes take that into account and issue a temporary ban rather than a permanent ban. But you'll see the stats that we put on our forums each month, and, you know, the permanent bans vastly outweigh the temporary bans. Yeah. The message really to the listener is, you know, if you use a bot or a macro, you know, you will get caught, you will get banned. Might not be the day you use the macro, might be a little bit later than that, but, you know, it will happen. It will catch up with you, so it's just not worth it.
All right, thanks for that, Steve. Some clear advice there. Let's move on to kind of a byproduct almost of this botting and cheating, which is real world trading. So this is buying and selling gold for real life money, often going to kind of third party websites and things like that. So what's our stance to that? How do we deal with that? Do we deal with it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, to be clear right from the outset, you know, nobody has our permission to sell gold generated in RuneScape. So, you know, that's against our rules. Again, we have a zero tolerance approach to it. You know, we'll ban people that are involved in that. It's a little bit trickier to talk about because we have to use some quite discrete methods and some sort of internal systems and heuristics to identify that stuff. So it's a little bit hard for me to talk about how we tackle it. But, you know, we are aware of it. We're on it. We do track these people. We do track where the wealth moves around the games. You know, there's people that try and disguise their real world trading activity by being involved in duels or dropping stuff to people and think that's kind of covering their tracks. You know, we're fully aware of all those sort of situations and how the gold moves around and how it ends up with real world traders. And so we are tracking that stuff daily, and, you know, where we identify it and we're certain of it, you know, and it's, you know, people don't need to be worried if your friend gives you a few million GP because, you know, it's your birthday or something like that. You know, you're not going to get banned for that. Yeah. People that are banned for real world trading, they know exactly what they're doing. They know they're involved in it. They might claim differently on our forums. They might try and paint a picture of innocence, but actually, you know, we're only tackling real world trading where we can see it's a real issue. You know, someone definitely knows what they're doing, and they're just not playing RuneScape. They're actually, that's a byproduct. They're just using it as a way to generate money and sell it illegally without our permission, and profiting off RuneScape, you know, without our permission, and breaking the rules and making things unfair for everyone else.
Yeah, okay. And like cheating, there are very rare cases where, you know, a number of staff will look at it on a case-by-case basis, and they might decide to issue a temporary ban, right? For cases where players probably bought gold, a small amount, a one-off offence. Is that right? Or,
yeah, I mean, again, it's very rare. The default action really is to permanently ban people. We do very occasionally apply temporary bans where we can just see there's some sort of mitigating circumstances, but, don't rely on that. The general principle is, if you're real world trade, and you're going to get permanently banned.
All right, okay, cool. Thanks for that, Steve. So next up is about account sharing. Obviously, there's a rule which prohibits people or kind of tells people they shouldn't share their account. But why is that? There are some comments on social media talking about account sharing happens all the time. Jagex don't do anything about it. Is that true? What's our stance towards account sharing, Steve?
I think account sharing is towards the lower end of rule breaking. It's certainly not right at the top of our list of things that we're hugely concerned about.
Sure.
And in the gaming community and wider outside of RuneScape, just talking about gamers in general, it's not that unusual to kind of share accounts. Where it causes an issue really is when you enter into an agreement with someone to share your account, and then that's all with good intent. They say they're going to do a quest for you or something like that. But then actually further down the line, there becomes issues with ownership of the account. And, when you let somebody use your account, even with its good intent of just doing the small thing for you and then never going on your account again, you're allowing that person to basically, put a footprint on their account. They've accessed your account, so we can see they've logged into it. It looks like they've got a claim to the account. It looks like you may have moved to the location where that person is. And it just starts to slowly build up a picture that this account isn't entirely secure. And then, you can bet that further down the line, there'll be some sort of situation where, people fall out in real life and they want to sort of cause a bit of griefing, and they'll try, I had access to my friend's account, let's see if I can get it off them now and cause some damage. And you just end up in this sort of situation of conflict where people are arguing over an account. And obviously we can usually tell who the owner is and side with them. But I'd say as a general principle, look, it's not the worst rule breaking in the world. We're not saying go out and do it. It's absolutely fine because it does present risks. But in terms of all of the rule breaking that could happen in RuneScape and in an online gaming environment, account sharing is towards the lower end of it.
All right, cool. Thanks, Steve. So talking about account sharing, when I talk about account selling, so this is someone who's built their account up and they're looking to sell it on an auction website or trying to sell it to players in game or swap it for an account. What's our stance towards account selling, account buying?
Yeah, we're a lot stronger against people selling accounts than just sharing their accounts. And that's because it's moved on a bit from, look, I just want my friend to help me with this quest I'm struggling with and I'm going to share my account. It's moved on from that into almost an agreement, a sort of a transaction process, where something's being exchanged for something, you're receiving money or something in real life in exchange for an account. It moves outside of RuneScape. It becomes, there's activity on other sites then, passwords start to have to be exchanged, people start to sell details of their account along with the account so that the buyer thinks that they've then got a good claim on it and can continue to recover it. That causes loads of problems. But of course, one of the big issues is that these people who sell accounts, they don't have the highest moral standards in the world, shall we say. And so, very often their intention is to just recover that account. They'll sell the account to someone, allow them to play it for a while, level the skills a bit, put a bit of wealth on it. They'll then simply recover that account back. And because they're the owner, they're the person that made the account, they're always going to have a strong claim to that. And then, of course, there's huge disappointment for the person that bought the account. Firstly, they've probably lost some real world money or something in terms of buying the account. They then put time and effort into the account. They then lose the account back to the owner. Now, where we can see that pattern, that trend happening, we'll deal with the owner. We'll normally ban the account, anyway to stop it continually being sold. But, my message would be just don't get yourself in that situation. If you buy an account, it's not your account. Somewhere, down the line, maybe not tomorrow, but at some point in the future, there's going to be a problem with that. And we're given a straight choice of siding with the owner or a buyer, we're going to side with the owner and then you're going to lose that account. So, the advice is don't sell an account.
Okay. All right, thanks, Steve. So let's talk about gambling and player-ran games of chance and that kind of stuff. There's a bit of confusion, certainly on social, about what constitutes as this. Do we take action? People might see lots of people spamming to join certain friends chats and that kind of stuff. I know we've taken some action in regards to dealing and modifying some items in game to prevent people using it as a mechanism to gamble. But what's our approach to dealing with that, Steve?
This whole kind of games of chance or gambling, people might refer to it, but it all kind of stemmed from the flower stuff that was kind of happening where you would stake money on the outcome of the colours of the flowers that would grow, and that became quite a widespread thing. There was times where we'd walk into communal areas like the Grand Exchange and just be covered with flowers and people talking about gambling on flowers. So we changed that mechanic so that the flowers all grow the same colour. And then, we've taken that approach of changing the way that some in-game items work so that they can't be gambled on. So, for example, the phrases spoken by the toy horsey, we changed that so it wasn't a random phrase, it was a set phrase. We changed the landing position of the starting imp, which maps where it would land on in relation to the player, because that was being gambled on, and now it always lands in the same location. But the thing is, that's really just sort of putting a plaster on things. It doesn't fix the root cause of the problem. If you imagine a RuneScape world that has no items in it at all, there's just players and GP, and there's not a single item in the game, you would say it's impossible to gamble in this game because there are no items to gamble on, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, what you could do is stand in the Grand Exchange and gamble on the letter of the alphabet of the name of the next person that walks into the Grand Exchange, right? Yep. And that's with no items in the game. Mm-hmm. Now, clearly, that's just unthinkable to do something like that, but I'm using an extreme example, but I'm just trying to make the point that however much we change and however much we do with game content and game items, people will find a way through, people will find a way to gamble on things. Mm-hmm. And to just change those things is really just delaying the next thing that will be gambled on. Yep. It's not effective and it doesn't remove it. Now, the flower thing is gone, and that's created a lot of the spam and disruption that was related to that is gone. That's a really good thing, and that's one of the driving things that actually wanted us to do that, because it was just becoming very disruptive. It was difficult to use a GE for its intended purpose because there was lots of this gambling type activity going on. Now gambling seems to have moved into more sort of private locations within kind of clan chats, private chats, and not so much public stuff. So it's not so visible and it's not causing the spam and disruption in that way. So in that sense, it's good. Mm-hmm. Now, there is, of course, a risk that where large amounts of money being involved moving around RuneScape within these gambling communities, that money is going to wind up with real-world traders. So that's a real risk. Mm-hmm. And that's something we target. I spoke earlier about how we deal with real-world trading, and that will pick up those aspects of gambling clans in terms of the wealth ending up with real-world traders. So we're kind of satisfied that we've kind of got that passed off. Where there is still a risk is that people just lose their stuff, because they just get scammed or conned by the people that are running these gambling things. It's not the way to make money in RuneScape. There's existing ways to do it through normal gameplay. It's going to be slower and so on, but it's legit and safe. If you're taking a gamble, the clue's in the name. It's a risk. The person could rip you off, could just walk away with your money, could not play fairly, could not explain the rules of the thing that you're gambling on, and just take your money. And frankly, if you just avoid it, then it won't be an issue. This whole thing is fueled by people wanting to earn money quickly without putting in the normal sort of effort reward ratio thing that makes RuneScape work. And if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. My advice would be just don't get involved in it. We'll deal with the real world trading aspects. That's fine. We're dealing with that. I wouldn't risk anything more than you're prepared to lose, and I basically wouldn't risk anything at all unless you don't know what's going to happen when you enter this agreement. And these people are probably. There's a good chance anyway they're going to take your money and walk away in it, and if they don't, you haven't got much, come back to that. There's not much you can do about it. Yeah. So we're always interested in listening to community to try and fix this sort of thing, but as I've explained, it's a complicated, deep ingrained issue, and it's not a simple fix. I very often see people say, just change this, just change the way this works, that will fix the gambling problem. Okay. It's more complex and involved.
It's not as easy as that. No. I think for people who are gambling or kind of hosting these big chats, there's a risk to them as well that will take them out of the game. It's not something which we want in the game because it has so many negative effects as a result of this kind of gambling. So, we'd always encourage people not to get involved for all the reasons you've mentioned, but also, you could end up getting kind of removed from the game as well.
Yeah, I mean, if we can see anyone that's involved in gambling, large amounts of wealth taking place, real world trading involved, scamming taking place, that sort of thing, we're going to take action against those accounts.
Yeah. Okay, so another rule which players can ask questions about is offensive language, especially now we've got the filtering game and that kind of stuff. So what's our stance towards offensive language? Is it, you say the F word, you're going to get in trouble, or is it more severe than that?
I mean, this sort of comes back to what I was talking about earlier about tolerance levels and different people's levels of what's acceptable and what isn't. There are some words which are generally pretty much unacceptable and pretty much offensive around the world, and those words are added to our filter list. So if you choose to switch on your profanity filter in the game, you'll see stars instead of those words. That's kind of really clear cut and at the top, and then I suppose there's loads of other types of language and words and things that aren't filtered but could potentially be offensive. I mean, offensive language, a sort of default response would be, look, pop someone on ignore. If you don't like what they're saying, add them to ignore list, you won't see what they're saying. Yeah. If you walked into a bar or restaurant and there was someone being very loud and just making you feel a bit uncomfortable because maybe they've had a few drinks and you just felt awkward in that situation, you could have the option to just move tables or leave the restaurant or go to another bar, You don't have to sort of, sit there and listen to it. if it was really concerning, you expected the owner of the bar or the restaurant to actually approach that person and do something about it. And that's a sort of similar approach in RuneScape, where we're the owner, if you like, and we would step in, and where there's clear kind of hate language and really clearly offensive language, then we will take action against it. But the kind of first stance, I think, for people to say, look, could I just ignore this person? Will the filter actually stop me seeing this language that I don't like? And if those things fail and you're still kind of offensive, you still think this person's causing offence within the community, you have the option to report it to us. Obviously, JMods are all, well-adjusted, sensible adults that can use good judgment. We've kind of got a good kind of moral compass, and we'll just kind of review things and just decide whether it's actually acceptable within the RuneScape gaming community or not.
All right, brilliant, thank you. And so finally, Steve, you mentioned a few of these tools already, but can you just kind of recap and go over the tools available for players that allow them to customise their own experience?
So obviously you can hide your online status. That's one that people actually often quite forget about. So you can just toggle that on or off and just decide whether anyone can see whether you're online or not. So that's a key one. Obviously, you kind of got your chat channels. You can choose whether you want to see your friends or just private chat, or just see everyone within all your various chat channels. There's the profanity filter that we spoke about. So you can kind of stick that on and see a few stars rather than some of the stronger language that you might occasionally see in the game. And then, of course, if all of that fails, if you've hidden your online status, you've been down the option of maybe ignoring people, you're using the profanity filter, you've chosen your chat channel settings and you're still seeing something that maybe you're just not very happy with, then you have the sort of option to pop a report into us. And as I say, that will come in front of a JMod who will review that situation and decide if something needs to be done.
All right, thanks for that, Steve. And that ties up the podcast section quite nicely. I think we've kind of discussed a load of things there, why we have the rules and the reasons for that. And kind of, the purpose they serve. Kind of gone into detail on some specific rules there and our approach to them. So hopefully that kind of players are more aware of our stance towards particular things, and then kind of just ended on that piece about the tools players can use to customize their experience. So all good stuff. And hopefully you guys listening have learned something new, or at the least it's been quite interesting to kind of hear from a JMod perspective the way we approach the rules of RuneScape. And so if you have any feedback or any comments about this podcast section, then do feel free to tweet us at Jagger Support. We're always listening and looking to improve where we can. So from me, that's goodbye. And Steve?
Yep, it's goodbye from me. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. And remember to join the Player Support stream in their first monthly stream next week on April the 19th, straight after the developer Q&A. They'll be showing you how you can get the most out of our amazing new game client, NXT. Bye.